My first personal training client actually cost me over £1,000 in lost revenue, caused me to doubt whether or not I was any good as a personal trainer and whether or not I could make it as a personal trainer. I see trainers making the same mistakes today. In this video, I want to share with you what those mistakes were, how I fixed them, and if you're having similar problems, how you can do the same as well. Let's dive in and find out what those mistakes were and how I fixed them. Okay, so let's put this into context. So my first ever personal training client was way back over 15 years ago. But here's what happened. I put out a newspaper ad because back in them days, social media wasn't a big thing. It was all ads in newspapers, magazines, and leaflet dropping. So I get a phone call. I go to the client's house, having had a very, very brief call on the telephone, nothing too in-depth. Go to a house and I have sort of like a 40-minute chit chat, present an option to her, and she says, yep, I'll sign up for a block of 10 sessions, 350 quid, £35 a session. I was like, woo woo, fantastic. Back to my girlfriend's flat at the time in Southampton. I thought, wow, someone's just paid me 350 quid for me to help them get fit. Within 24 hours, this lady had cancelled her sessions. I was feeling absolute, I won't say devastated, that'd be over dramatising it, but it did cause me to doubt whether or not I was a competent trainer, whether or not I could make it as a personal trainer. It made me think, have I done something wrong here? But after I calmed down, I kind of analysed the situation. I cancelled the check, informed the client, so I made sure I told her that I'd cancelled the check, ripped it up, and started to analyse what I thought had gone wrong. And this is what I think went wrong, and I'll talk about how I fixed it. So first of all, what I think went wrong. First of all, the initial call on the telephone was very, very brief. It was kind of like a quick bit of chit chat from what I recall. When I turned up to her house to talk about personal training, it was just me and just talking about the benefits of fitness training, how I could help her. Let's just book up for a block of 10 sessions, 2 a week, and let's just kind of go from there. And that's pretty much what I did. Now, you may have heard of a thing called buyer's remorse. If you've not heard of buyer's remorse before, it's basically when you buy something, and you may have done this yourself in the past, you get the product home or you buy a particular service, and afterwards you have regret about buying the thing that you've just purchased. That's what we call buyer's remorse. And I think she had a degree of buyer's remorse. You know, this guy turns up, she doesn't really know me from Adam, although I did have a website back there, but didn't really know me. And maybe she just thought, this guy just taking 350 quid off of me. I've booked up for something, and you know what, I just don't know if it's going to work for me. So she cancelled the session. So I was in a situation where I had to regroup my thinking and reanalyze how I went about offering personal training. So I'm going to now talk about the changes I made that helped me to go forwards and not only have a successful career, in my opinion, of over 15 years, but also go on to build and open up multiple studios and employ other personal trainers. One of those staff members staying with me for over 4 years, and me paying him at the peak of his earning potential over £25,000 a year. Now that may not sound like a lot of money. It was a bit more money a few years ago, and I would suggest that even today most trainers are not earning £25,000 a year. So let's dive into the changes that I made that allowed me to do that. And before I talk about the changes that I made, just to let you know, there is some free training to go along with this video about how to create, market and sell your own high ticket fat loss program. If that's something you're interested in doing, find the link around this video, click on it, put your email in, your name, and you get some free training starting today. Okay, so what were the changes that I made to be able to go on and have a 15-year career as a personal trainer? Well, first of all, my initial chat on the phone was more in depth. You know, I asked more pertinent questions. I got a better idea of where people were coming from, had they had a trainer before, you know, what their specific goals were, you know, levels of motivation. I also gave them an overview of what I offered and the investment levels as well. Now, this was a work in progress. It didn't all happen overnight, but eventually that's what I got to, and that certainly helped. So that was the initial chat on the phone. The second thing I did was when I went to their houses, you know, because at the time I was doing home visits, I wasn't in a studio at that time, I would go into a lot more detail in terms of the questions I asked them, and I would sort of poke a bit deeper, not to make them feel uncomfortable, but to really uncover any potential barriers that may stop them from being successful in the future. For example, one of the questions I asked would be, on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to not just losing weight, but making a lifestyle change so that you can not only lose weight, but maintain it long term and create a new lifestyle that supports weight loss and maintain its long term. And if they answered, let's say, an 8 out of 10, which is a good number for me, I would then ask another follow-up question like, okay, what's the gap between the 8 and the 10? If they said, well, I don't think I can follow a healthy diet long enough, I would be able to answer that question because of the way my program was created and talk about, we talk about dietary principles. We don't just give people diets, and that would kind of answer that question. Obviously, I spoke a little bit more, but basically what I'm saying is I'd ask these questions to make sure that I'd covered all of the potential reasons why they may bail out of personal training, whether it be 24 hours later like that lady did before, a week or two later, a month or two later, because really what I wanted were clients who were going to commit, not just to me, but to commit to themselves. And unless you uncover their real fears about being successful, and people are fearful about being successful, especially if they've failed in the past, unless we uncover that, the chances are they're going to bail out like the lady did, my first client. So that was that. I then presented a visual representation of what I'll be doing to help them get to where they wanted to get to. So I'd have at the time it was like a mini flip chart, and I'll just sort of show them the journey, and it wasn't as sophisticated as it became when I opened up my studios and employed staff, but it was certainly moving in that direction. Now the benefit of having a visual presentation is people who are not necessarily auditory in terms of how they interpret information, they can hear me speaking, but they can also see something in front of them. So if they're more visual, which I am and possibly you are as well, they can now see some visual elements to what it is they're going to be getting. And then the next thing I did was I created some support materials, and initially it was a very, very basic document that I gave people, nothing fancy, but just something that they can actually tangibly hold in their hands rather than it just being me turning up and doing personal training. And the final thing that I did was I started to offer people monthly payments rather than blocks of 10. Again, that wasn't an immediate thing, that took some time to develop, but it meant that people were paying on a monthly basis over a period of time, because that first client, she was going to be paying $350 effective every 5 weeks, and the idea was she'd have signed up for just over 3 months, so that's how I got at the over £1,000. Doing it this way, asking people to pay monthly, it was something that people back then were doing anyway, paying mortgages, paying their electricity bills, paying their car bills, and they're still doing that to this day as well. So it was quite normal and natural for them to do that. And they also had the option of stopping at any time as well. So I wasn't really holding people's feet to the fire and saying, you can't cancel, because that's not the way I operated. It was more of a gentleman's agreement that they'd signed up for 3 months and that's what they were going to do. So making those very simple changes, which didn't happen overnight, allowed me to systematize how I worked with clients, but then it allowed me to teach my staff how to do the same thing when clients were coming to our studio or when they were speaking to them initially on the phone and then inviting them into studios. So if you've enjoyed that training, definitely check out the next video on screen, whichever side it's at, because I think you'll enjoy that one as well.